Man, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of EOS. It's 1090 Jake, man. I'm rocking with y'all rocking with me. And for this episode, we're going to be speaking on how YNW Bortlen'S dad was the target of a shooting that left him with 2 bullets lodged in his spine. He may be paralyzed, and the shooter has been arrested. The motive being revenge for YNW Juvy and YNW Sakchaser. September 14th, 2020, police responded to 3976 Lincoln Drive in Vero Beach, Florida in response to a shooting. A man was found face down on the ground in front of the address with 3 gunshot wounds to his back. No eyewitnesses, but multiple neighbors came forward saying they heard 4 gunshots from inside their apartments. At the crime scene, there was a silver Jeep pickup truck backed into a parking space that was operated by the victim. A bullet hole through the bed of the truck on the driver's side and multiple shell cases by the rear of the truck. The victim was alive, transported to Longwood Regional Medical Center. A detective collected the victim's clothing at the hospital for evidence, a doctor advising the victim was in surgery, and 2 of the bullets were stuck in his spine. It was likely that he would survive, but also likely he'd now be paralyzed. Detectives made contact with a male named Willie Taylor, known as BJ, at the crime scene. He stated he was outside talking to the victim at the time of the shooting. They were hanging out at the bed of the truck when an unknown black male wearing all black came out from behind the north side of the apartment building. He said nothing. He just aimed a handgun and started firing. The shooter then disappearing behind the building. BJ had no idea who the shooter was or why the victim was targeted, but he was 100% sure that it was a targeted hit. Throughout the rest of the evening and into the following day, several anonymous tips came into the sheriff's office, almost all of them providing the same information. Travion Banks, also known as Trill, was the shooter, and his friend Shaquem Parker, also known as K-Real, was with him. Tips also said BJ knew who the shooter was, but was too afraid to say anything to law enforcement. Another tip saying a white Chrysler was also shot in the shooting, but the victim had yet to come forward. September 15th, a sheriff deputy located a white Chrysler sedan with a bullet hole in the passenger side in Victory Park. He ran the license plate and the vehicle was registered to none other than BJ, the witness that was standing with the victim. He said he was afraid to say he had moved the car after the shooting, saying he moved it so it would be easier for paramedics to get to the victim. On September 16th, BJ met with detectives, stating he was afraid to tell them everything in his initial interview because he doesn't want to be seen talking to law enforcement due to fear of retaliation. Well, now everybody on YouTube knows your ass was talking to law enforcement. BJ said he did actually see the person who shot. 30 minutes prior to the shooting, 2 black males came to him and the victim asking if they had a blunt. BJ told them he didn't, and they walked to the back of the building. 30 minutes later, BJ saw a black male approach and fire his gun 4 times directly at the victim. The shooter was the same one that asked for the blunt. BJ said the shooter lives very close to him, and that made him scared to tell law enforcement who it was. When asked to identify the shooter, BJ pulled up a picture from Facebook and pointed to a black male wearing a blue cap and gown. The Facebook profile belonging to Sierra Banks, and she referred to the person in the picture as her son, Trill. When BJ was asked how he knew Trill shot the victim, BJ motioned his hand over his face, signifying he recognized his face. Not only that, but the victim saw who shot him and should also be able to identify him. September 21st, the victim was taken off of a ventilator, now able to speak. Agreeing to talk with detectives, he gave the same story as BJ. 2 black males asked for a blunt, then went behind the building. He said 15 minutes later, he was talking to BJ and heard a click behind him. He turned around to see the same 2 males aiming guns at him. He believed the click was one of the guns jamming. Attempting to run behind the truck as gunfire erupted, the second shot he heard fired, he felt enter his back, causing him to fall. He couldn't get up, he couldn't walk, and attempted to hide behind the truck laying down. When asked why these 2 would attempt to kill him, he said he exchanged words with them over a month ago about his son, Cortland Henry. also known as YNW Bortlen. This information matched anonymous tips stating the shooting was revenge for YNW Juvy and YNW Sakchaser, who allegedly were killed by YNW Bortlen and YNW Melly. Detectives asked if Bortlen's dad knew the individuals that shot him, and he said they live a few buildings down from where the shooting occurred. A sergeant presented a photo lineup, and Bortlen's dad was able to positively identify Sakchaser Parker as one of the shooters. In the second photo lineup, he said the hair didn't match because the subject had twisties in his hair. He said he knew the shooter's mom and confirmed the name was Sierra. When shown the Facebook photo of Trill that BJ provided, he said he was 100% sure that was the other person that shot him. Detectives later speaking with BJ again identified both Sakchaser Parker and Trevion Banks as the two males who asked for a blunt, but he wouldn't specify which was the shooter. Based on these interviews, a warrant was signed on September 22nd and Trill was arrested the very next day. His home address, 3953 Kennedy Court, only seconds away from where the shooting happened. Now this is wild and it's unexpected, because I would assume if revenge was gonna come from the shooting with Melly and Bortlen, it would have came sooner. So it seems that it may not fully be motivated by what happened to Juvy and Sakchaser, but more so between the confrontation the father had with the shooter. And another thing, while you're inside of jail fighting a murder charge because you allegedly killed somebody, you're not free to defend your family or your people if anybody tries to get revenge on the alleged crimes against you and target your family. Just look at the Nipsey Hussle case. As soon as the shooter was arrested for that, people started sliding on his family, taking out his cousins. Now Bortlen's free on bond though, and he's dropping music videos. I would assume he's got a little bit of money, he can move his people out. His father's obviously a main witness in this case. BJ is a main witness. Those two witnesses right there are going to be vital in securing a conviction against the alleged shooter. And on top of that, I'm sure that a revenge-motivated shooting could also be used in court against Melly and Bortlen as the prosecutors try to paint a picture. Look, they must have killed Sakchaser and Juvy because people are retaliating on their family on the street. But as y'all know, Melly and Bortlen's murder case is going to take time. I'm sure that Trill's attempted murder case is also going to take time. And what was weird about it is there's no word about what's up with Sakchaser Parker. If police have made contact with him, he wasn't arrested. From what I could see on the court site, there was no warrant written inside of the court site. So I'm not sure what's going on with him. But the shooter was booked on first-degree murder, and we're just gonna have to see how everything plays out. It's 1090 Jake. I'm rocking with y'all rocking with me. Till next time.